It is now 3:32 and time to start the meeting. To officially start the meeting, I'd like to say that the meeting will be recorded and shared amongst members for study and self-reflection. Here are some ground rules to start. Put yourself on mute when not speaking. Don't interrupt while someone's speaking. Be attentive throughout the meeting and support the speakers with your warm jazz hands. Let's have a great meeting. And now for our club president, Peter Shee.
Hello, I want to have a special thanks to Mr. Horace Taylor, Miss Renee Taylor, and also Mr. Xavier Taylor, and also my mother, Miss Shee, for setting up the event yesterday where we got to vendor our club, and we got a couple of people who expressed interest in the club. So I want to thank them for doing that and setting that up. And also, welcome back from our week off of Toastmasters. Thank you for coming. And now I'll pass the podium to our Toastmaster for today, Xavier Taylor.
Thank you. It's now time for me to introduce our grammarian and our timer. First up, our grammarian, Miss Renee Taylor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, and if there are any welcome guests. As grammarian, it is my responsibility to pay close attention to all speakers, listen carefully to what language usage. I'll take notes of any egregious misuses of the English language, as well as any luminous usage. As grammarian, it is also my duty to introduce the word of the day. The word of the day is decorous. The definition, marked by propriety and good taste, correct. A person or thing that is decorous conforms to an approved or conventional standard. An example, before making her daily announcements, the principal mentioned how proud she was of the students' decorous conduct at the recent school dance. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. And now for our timer, Mr. Don Gray.
Thank you, Toastmaster Xavier Taylor. I should say Gavelier. Thank you for your introduction. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters and guests. As timer, I will time the table topics, speakers, the formal speeches, and the evaluation portion of our meeting. I will also alert each speaker of the time they have left using the green, the yellow, and the red virtual background. The table topics should limit their remarks to 1 minute. At 1 minute, you will see the green virtual background. At 1 minute and 30 seconds, you will see the yellow virtual background. And at 2 minutes, you will see the red virtual background. Today, we have 2 speeches of 5 to 7 minutes. At 5 minutes, I will turn on the green virtual background. 6 minutes, I will turn on the yellow virtual background. At 7 minutes, I will turn on the red virtual background. We also have evaluations today, and evaluations should be between 2 to 3 minutes. At 2 minutes, you will see the green virtual background. 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the yellow. And at 3 minutes, you will see the red. Otherwise, you will see the timer's clock, which I ask you to pin if possible. All speakers have a 30-minute before and after grace period to close out their remarks and to start their remarks. I will come back at the end of the meeting with my report. Back to you, Toastmaster Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Don Gray. It's now time for me to introduce our first speaker, which would be Peter Shee.
I'm not the spirit speaker. I'm the evaluator for the person.
Oh, wait. See, that's my fault. I was looking at the wrong line. Mr. Tim Gell.
Okay. So for my icebreaker, I'll be talking about one of my favorite hobbies, which is origami. To explain all of this, I'll give a brief description of what origami is. Then I will give a bit of background about it. And lastly, I'll give a bit of examples of what each type of origami is and different types of origami. So first off, what is origami? Origami, as in the name, it's originated from Japanese. In Japanese, ori means to fold and gami means paper. So when you put it together, it just means folding paper. And there are a few rules in origami that some people follow, but usually you should follow them. It's just to not cut or glue paper. And so this has actually been a bit debated in origami. The exact origin of origami is actually not very known, it's kind of unknown. Since paper was invented in China, as they said, in first century AD, and Japan, other people say that Japan, the paper was brought to Japan by Buddhist monks in the 6th century AD. And it's quite unknown that whether origami actually originated from China or Japan, but it was popularized in Japan. So how did it get popular? With people who have like seen paper folding, you might be familiar with the Japanese crane. This was a very popular thing that got popular when people said, if you could fold 1,000 paper cranes, you could have your wish come true. And as paper got more affordable, people would start using it to make gifts and also just to fold paper and to have a fun hobby. Origami also kind of became an educational tool in some places. Folding paper involves many concepts for geometry and just mathematics. So there are many different types of origami, and there are just many different like units to it. I'm just going to explain a few of them. I'll name out and just explain what they are. The first one I'm going to talk about is golden venture folding. So this is one of my favorite types of origami. I like to do this a lot. It's made of different modular paper. Each unit, it's made from different units. Each unit is made of about a 2-inch times a 1-inch piece of paper, and it is folded into a triangular unit. And with these triangular units, you put them together to make some kind of sculpture, and that's golden venture folding. Another one would be modular folding, as in the name, it's where you have multiple different units, kind of like the golden venture folding, but this type of units isn't triangular. This is just like different types of patterns that put together to make something. If you've made a ninja star before, this would be a modular origami because it's made from about 2 different pieces put together. And then another one would be tessellations. Origami tessellations are just many patterns folded into paper. And this one is, I mainly don't have any like use for this, but I think it's just a fun thing to do. When you fold paper, you can, after you finish folding it, you just see these patterns occur over the piece of paper you folded. And it's just very interesting to look at. A few more are action folding and wet origami. Action folding is, as in the name, it has action in it. So this is a piece of paper folded into something which can be like moved and it has action to it. So one of these people might be used to are the fortune teller or the cootie catcher, as some people call it. This, you can move it like up and sideways, and that's a part of action. There's also another origami called the spring. It's also a piece of folded paper into what it looks like a spring, and when you compress it, it will spring back up. That is also an example of action origami. And wet folding is, as in the name applies, you use water to wet the paper so it's more foldable and malleable, and you can curve it a lot more. And when you use that, you usually have a base made of something and use paper to cover that. And then with that, when it hardens, you'll have something that looks more realistic than just folding like geometry shapes. And lastly, this isn't really related to origami, but it's kind of like a branch off of origami. It's called kirigami. Kirigami is kind of the opposite of origami. When ori means to fold, kiri actually means to cut. So kirigami means you can cut the paper just like paper snowflakes. That is a form of kirigami. And I've done a bit of kirigami, but personally, I'm not that great at it, and I just kind of don't really like it. But it's also a type of common thing that people do. And that's the end of my speech.
All right, thank you for that speech. Thank you for that speech about origami. We move on to our second speaker, which is Mr. Michael Lee.
Michael is not here,
Michael Leo is not at present.
so
We can skip
we probably can ask somebody to do an impromptu speech. Can y'all hear me?
This is just like.
Okay.
Yeah, we can
We
just
can
move
do
on
a
to table topics.
table topics, longer table topics.
That's fine.
Yes.
I can do an impromptu.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Give me 5 to 7 minutes on the clock.
Thank you.
I would like to begin my speech by saying this is a titleless speech. However, by the time I conclude my speech, a title will arrive that will be fitting for the speech. Here's how I will lay out my speech. I will talk a little bit about how I grew up, and then how I quickly transitioned into becoming an adult, and then some of the interesting things that I've done as an adult, as it ties all those things back to being a child. The goal, obviously, is to arrive at a title for my speech. First, I am only one of 15 children. We had a very large family. Being that I was so low down the pecking order, I naturally received all the clothes and all the shoes that my siblings had. Interestingly enough, my father was a preacher or a minister. Not only was he a minister, he was a master mason. A mason is that person who works with bricks and stones, and you've seen brick houses or stone houses. That's what he did, in addition to being a carpenter. A few years ago, about 12 years exactly, I asked my father to travel with me to Egypt. At the time, my father was 88 years old. He had never been on a plane in his life. And as far as that matter, he had never been outside of the country. Well, at 88, my father decided, okay, son, I will go with you on this trip to Africa. So months later, he and I and Xavier and my daughter Jasmine and my other son Zachary and my wife Renee, the 6 of us boarded a plane en route to Africa. We landed in Egypt. Now, once we had to deplaned and was in our caravan heading to an hotel, my father looked over his shoulder and could see the caps of the Great Pyramid. he said, are we going to see that? I said, absolutely, we're going to see that because you are a master mason. That is the ultimate in working with stones, the pyramids. A few days later, we finally arrived at the pyramid, and it blew him away. And he started asking me things about stories in the Bible, which I knew nothing about, because once I left his household, I decided I would no longer find my direction or compass by using the Bible. I decided I will use other books. So I began this long journey to learn about the history of African people. And to my surprise, some of the things that I have read and subsequently learned about and come to accept blew not only my mind, but blew his mind. Here's an example. While we were in Egypt, we had gone through one of the sites where most of the tourists goes, and it's actually called the Valley of the Kings, right? And I'm sure most of you have probably heard about the Valley of the Kings. As I said, my father was a preacher. And I remember he taught me this story as a child. I shouldn't call it a story. I think it's called the 23rd Psalms. And the part that says, although I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Well, when we were walking through the Valley of the Kings, it just so happened, it was about 9 o'clock in the morning when we entered. At 9 o'clock, the mountain, the cliff that was on the right of us, with the sun coming up, it cast this huge shadow over us. And then a few hours later, 2 hours later, sun was high noon. And yet 2 hours later, the sun was now on the left side, casting an opposite shadow on us. As I said, the valley of the shadow of death. The death part of the valley of the shadow of death was the fact that that's the place where all the pharaohs, all the kings were placed, like in a cemetery, right? But they were inside the mountains. So I remember telling my father, or saying to my father, Dad, you remember that line in the Bible that goes, and I shall fear no evil as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I said, Dad, do you understand, or do you realize we are literally walking in the valley of the shadow of death? I had no idea that it would hit him the way it did. As I said when I began this story, I would be looking for a title for this speech. And I believe the title is something along this line. I certainly fear nothing that's evil, because I have a perspective now on what evil and evilness or wrongdoing is. And truly, goodness and mercy will follow me the rest of the days of my life. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster. Bam! Thank you. That was a time filler.
Thank you for that impromptu speech on the spot. Since it is around that time, it's now time for our table topics. Our table topics master is Matthew Shee.
Thank you, Tim and Horace, for those two speeches. And now I will shift towards our table topic session. My first question is, when experiencing a setback, what do you normally do?
or this can be an activity or a ritual or anything.
Honey, can you put the agenda? Tony's asking for it. Oh,
Sorry. I'll repeat the question. When experiencing a setback, what do you normally do? And that question is for Xavier.
Thank you for that question. So you said, what do I do when I usually face a setback? What I do usually when I face a setback, rather than get mad about it or something along that lines, I chill out, sit back, and think about it. And think about ways to not have the same setback in the future. Because for me, although I still do get mad, my parents hear me upstairs yelling every day on the game. But when I'm not on the game, and I face setbacks here in the real world, I don't get mad or sad. Because I know getting mad or sad won't help the fact or help with anything in that setback. We want to calm down, think about it, and make sure not to make the same mistake. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Xavier, for that question. And my next question is, what is one area in your life that you have grown the most in the past year? And that question is for Alan.
Thank you for that question. I would say one area that I have grown most in, I just realized, one area that I have grown most in is my height over the last year. Over the last year, I actually, before in, I'd say 2021 or perhaps, I was actually around 5 feet, and that was rather short. And most of my friends did make fun of me for that, and I thought it was also rather funny. And then over the duration of that year, I went through a sort of growth spurt, as you would say, and I grew a whole bunch. And I think I am now around 5'9", around, I haven't measured, but I have grown around 9 inches, and most of my friends have been very shocked about that. And I think it is very funny that I was at first made fun of for being short, and now I am not as short. And it is fun to make fun of my friends for their misconceptions.
Thank you, Alan, for that answer. And my next question is, what is your favorite food and why? This question is for Jonathan.
Thank you for the question. My favorite food is probably yams. My family like makes yams a certain way, and they're really tasty. So I mean, it's not exactly some special recipe. It's just we either steam or microwave them, and then and they're sweet, and they're and if it's microwaved the right way, it's not quite dry, but it's moist and flavorful. And also I like to add them to like porridge or congee to make it sweet, as opposed to just salty. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you for your answer. And my next question is, should aspects of religion be prevalent in government policies? And that question is for Peter.
Wow. Say it out loud. Don't drop the.
Oh god. Okay.
We're recording this.
Yeah, we are recording this. Okay. Thank you for that question. Me personally, I'm not as political as the rest of the people around me, but if I was to say if religion should affect government policy, I'd say that overall it should not affect government policy most times, but I feel like religion does have some morally right or wrong difference where people can take inspiration from that and then apply it to government policy. Um, but those are simple things such as like don't murder, do not steal. Of course, those should be applied to government policies. But for the most part, some things are very subjective when it comes to how government should be run. And religion is a big part of some policies that are become subjective and become opinionated. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for that decorous approach. And my next question is, what place do you have a close connection with? And this is to Joseph.
Thank you for the question, Matthew. Yeah, so a close place I have a strong connection with, I would say for me, it would be China. And let me explain why. So China is my hometown, Shenzhen specifically. Shenzhen is right next to Hong Kong. It's like a half an hour drive from there. But I lived in China. I was born in Austin, Texas, and then I moved to Chicago. And from Chicago, I moved to China, to Shenzhen, and I lived there for about 3 years. So during that period, during that time in China, during those 3 years, I attended preschool there, and I hung out with my grandparents at home. I learned a lot about Chinese food, culture, and all those traditions. For example, like the Autumn Moon Festival, or the Chinese New Year. So those were those type of festivities or traditions that I and my family participated in. And that really had a strong impact on me, I guess. I really would love to go back to China now. I live in Arkansas now, so it would be great if I could go back to China, but hopefully I can in the future. But yes, China is a very strong place where I have a strong connection to. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Joseph. I also have a close connection with China as well. And my next question is, should college education be free? And this is to Michael.
Thank you for that question, Peter. And I think all of us here would like one answer to be true. And that answer would be yes. But unfortunately, that is not quite true in our world. On one end of the spectrum, you have state colleges that you can attend for absolutely free, famed for their drunken parties and low GPA scores. On the other end, you have the Ivy League schools where you can spend your life savings to obtain a diploma that will be worth much more in life, or so they say. Now, me personally, I take a middle stance. I would like to go to a college that is not quite so expensive, but also can offer me a good education. Now that begs the question, why don't we just combine both ends of the spectrum? Why doesn't every college have same standard of education that it can provide to everyone? That way, if colleges all cost the same, there would have to be no choice to be made. And in the end, I think everyone in the world would benefit from an equal college education as it would improve society as a whole. So my final answer would be there should be a price as college is a choice, but ultimately it should not be so high as to be unaffordable for most. Thank you.
Michael. Thank you, Michael, for that answer. And my next question is, what are you looking forward to most this year? And that question is to Hanson.
Thank you for the question. So, something really hopeful that is coming up, like what you said, the PSAT. So I am about to take the PSAT. So the past few days I've been preparing for it. So taking like a few example SATs on Khan Academy. So not really much to say on what I would like to accomplish this year, besides making just going to the PSAT in the national area.
Thank you for that response. And okay. We got like 6 minutes. My next question is, what is please give your job title or your job description, and what is something that you enjoy most about your job? And this question is to Horace.
Thank you for that question. My job title and what I have liked about it. Well, let me just start with the job title and then I'll figure out what I like about it, right? So my job title is I am a cybersecurity risk analyst. What I like most about it is the fact that before I became a cybersecurity risk analyst, I used to do computer hacking. And actually, I still do it, but I don't get paid to do hacking. I get paid to be an analyst. And here's the difference. As a hacker, I can use any and all tools, whether government purchase tool or open source tools. I simply download the tool, I set up my little home lab, and I test to see if I can master the tool. Once I've mastered the tool, I would never say that I test the tool live on anybody's network. However, when I'm at work as a cybersecurity analyst, I look at the network, our enterprise, and I point out weaknesses within the network from the skills that I have learned as an offensive cybersecurity guy. So as an analyst, I am there defending the network, or at least pointing out where the vulnerabilities are within the networks. And that's what I enjoy about my job. And I guess the really cool thing is they pay a ton of money for just sitting here tinkering with computers. And you guys have grown up in the computer age. Each and every one of you should be hackers. Back to you, sir. It pays a lot of money and it's fun.
Thank you, Horace Taylor, for that response. And my next question is, why do you think aspects of science and aspects of religion often contradict? And this is to Anna.
Thank you, Gavalia, Matthew, for that question. So why the science and the religion oftentimes contradict each other? I think it's because we have a limited view, limited knowledge about this world. A lot of times we think we can understand the world through science, but does the science really give us the whole view? A lot of the times when we do the experiments, we can twist the numbers to prove that our opinion is right. We lost objectiveness. You can use the same data to prove this opinion, and you can use that same set of data to prove another opinion. Just depend on how you use it. So I wouldn't really just believe in some scientific research or conclusion just because they said they did the scientific research. I would really want to get into the details and see how they did it and look at the data. On the other hand, I do believe that our human beings are limited. We're that tiny ant in the whole universe. We will never see how marvelous, how wonderful this world is. We will never understand how those were created. So I would leave that to everybody here to just keep an open mind. Because one day, if you don't understand something, just trust that you are this little ant in the universe. And trust that there is something that out there that will make this world better. Thank you.
I believe we have time for one more question. And this question, it is, if you could wake up and possess one skill that you don't have, what would it be? This is to Renee Taylor.
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
If you could wake up and possess one skill that you don't already have, what would it be?
If I could wake up and possess one skill that I don't already have, what would it be? Oh, that's an easy one for me. I would like to be a singer. And as of now, I have an awful voice. It's not made for singing, but I love music and I love to sing because I'm generally a happy person. And as soon as the music comes on, even if it's the instrumental version of the music, I'm either humming or I'm singing the words that I do know, because oftentimes I don't know all the words. So I completely make up my own words if they sound good and they sound like they should fit to that particular song. And my cousins like to call me tone deaf because I cannot hold a tune to save my life. But the melodies of those that can hold a tune is just a beautiful thing. And if I can make the world a better place just by singing, that would be ideal for me. I would actually go into a hospital and sing for children. But in my current state, as my voice is set up now, I would probably frighten them or even maybe shatter glass. So if there's a skill that I would like to have or possess right now, it would actually be that of a songstress. Thank you so much for the question, Mr. Taylor Topics.
Thank you, Renee Taylor. And with that, I would like to close our table topics session. I thank you all for your participation. And now I would like to turn back the role to Xavier Taylor.
Thank you for that extended table topics session, since we started at around 3:50. It's now time for our evaluators or general evaluation section. So I'd like to introduce our general evaluator, Alan G.
Thank you. It's actually Alan G, but I I will immediately transfer my role to the next person, evaluator one. Read or shoot.
Okay, I'll be evaluating Mr. Well, not Mr. He's younger than me, but Tim Zhao, I think it's Zhu, speech. For the first one, he did have very strong points. He came in and he pointed out what he was going to be talking about, origami, and then he defined it. We did get to know our speaker well. He didn't talk about more personal things, but he did go into one personal thing and went really in depth about that. So I believe we still got to know him really well. It did seem like he had adequate preparation because he had a lot of knowledge on origami, even pointing out historical facts and historical evidence to support some of his claims. He did speak clearly and audibly, and he did have a good opening, body, and conclusion. He went from what is origami to the history of origami, and then he pointed out types of origamis and defined them as well. I did see that he was using notes, which is a good thing. I often saw him looking to the side, which is okay because it is a lot of history that he pointed out to us and was giving us a lot of information for us to digest. So obviously it would be really hard to memorize all that information. So the use of notes was warranted in that situation. I believe what he could have done different was use body language a little more, maybe even bring out an example of origami to show or have a visual aid into what we are actually talking about. I feel like that would bring in a lot of people who are not as listening type of people, or more visual type of people, which I am. I really like the presentation because it was very informative. And I have seen origami and I do think it's interesting. I personally have not gotten into origami because I suck at it every single time we do it. So I did find it really interesting that you know a lot about origami, and it's a very good thing that you are interested into it. Thank you. Back to general evaluated.
All right, thank you. Next, we will have Forrest Taylor's evaluation of Forrest Taylor. Go for it.
It will be a panel evaluation.
Uh,
A panel evaluation
How does that work?
that everybody can evaluate. Everybody can jump in and
Okay.
do some.
Who would like to start?
Okay.
I will.
Thank you. Go for it.
I think Oris did a great job, especially since it was an impromptu speech. He began by putting us in suspense because he did not tell us the title of his speech. So that meant we had to really pay attention carefully so we can understand where he was taking us with his speech. And it brought back such fond memories because he actually spoke about the time when we went to Egypt. And he also introduced us to how he connected the Bible's 23rd Psalm with when we went to the Valley of the Pharaohs. And he explained how he tied it together when he told us how the sun set in the Valley of the Pharaohs. And then he connected it right to that one particular verse in the 23rd Psalm, which tied it back to his dad, his 88-year-old dad, who was on a trip with us. So I thought he did a good job with the cohesion of the speech. He had a few errors that I will cover in my report as the grammarian, but overall, there was a clear beginning, a clear middle, and a clear ending. So thank you for that speech, Toastmaster Horace.
I guess I'll just jump in because, okay. The one thing that I really noticed that was really good about it was oftentimes in essays and also in speeches, it brings it all together when you refer back to the introduction at the end. And at the end, you stated, now, at the beginning, you stated, oh, I don't have a title for the speech. And then in the end, it's a really good conclusion to wrap it up and say, well, now we have a title for a speech. I feel like it gives a sense of journey and adventure throughout the speech to get to the end point of the speech. So very good job on that.
I want to jump in to say, Horace, you did a great job telling the personal story. And this is really refers to Tim's icebreaker speech. Tim, I think you did a great job. You have a really calm voice. That's the fundamental of a great speaker. But I would love to hear your personal story, just like Horace did. As a matter of fact, in this menu, all 10 projects about the personal stories. We have seen a lot of students, they're giving school reports, the class reports. They're talking about some things they learned in the class and they do a project on, but not really about themselves. So I would really just encourage you to discover some personal stories and tell us in this menu. We have 10 projects for all your stories. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. We're gonna conclude it there to try to stay on schedule. Okay, so next we will go on to the timers report, I suppose. Andre.
Thank you, Toastmaster. As your timer, today we had a total of 10 table topic speakers. I will start with the table topic speakers first. My first speaker, which was Xavier Taylor, spoke for 1 minute and 10 seconds. The second speaker, I do believe, was Alan. I did not catch his name, but he spoke for 1 minute and 6 seconds. Jonathan spoke for 53 seconds. Peter, 1 minute and 10 seconds. Joseph C., 1 minute and 35 seconds. Michael, 1 minute and 26 seconds. Stephen, I'm sorry, the seventh speaker, I did not get your name, 38 seconds. Horace Taylor, 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Anna, 2 minutes and 7 seconds. And Renee Taylor, 1 minute and 35 seconds. That was the table topic speakers today. I prepared speeches from 5 to 7 minutes. Tim, you did a great job. You were 5 minutes and 33 seconds. Horace Taylor, you were 7 minutes and 7 seconds. Both did a great job. And the evaluation portions of the meeting, Peter, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Renee Taylor, 1 minute and 25 seconds. And Anna, 1 minute exactly. We all did a great job today. That is your time report. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Okay, thank you. Now we go to the grammarian, Renee Taylor.
Thank you so much. We had a plethora of filler words today. But first, before I give my report, I would like to say I enjoyed the decorous order that the meeting was conducted in today. There were two Toastmasters that used the word of the day. That would be myself and Matthew. Great job, Matthew. Matthew is also the Toastmaster who did not use any filler words for today. So let's snap them up. Great job, Matthew. Since we had a plethora of filler words, I would just like to point out what we all should pay attention to. We might want to try to eliminate. Xavier, you repeated a word. You actually said cause instead of because one time. And you generally do well with the filler words. You use one time. And I can say that because that's the one filler word that you use. Peter, you did a great job. Oh, here, I have you in two places. So Peter, try to pay attention to the word and I'm just gonna go down to the list. Don, please pay attention, and I just use the filler word. to the word or ah. Alan, same thing, or ah. Tim, really focus on your uhs and ahs. I think you use that when you're trying to get your thoughts together and you lean heavily on them. We have Horace, your filler word, favorite filler word is and. You use that as a transition often. You also, you said clothes instead of clothes with the S on it. Same thing with pyramid. And then one time you used goes versus go. You had one double talk with like in the word I. Now, I said Peter already. Matthew did a great job. Michael, pretty good. I caught you, you fixed it yourself in mid-sentence. You said don't, but you meant didn't, but you fixed it. We have gray sweatshirt shirt with the hoodie. I'm not sure who that was. Okay, that person, you lean heavily on and so. So just make sure you're aware of those two words that are your favorite. Anna, you did a great job. You had a couple, but nothing to mention really. I caught myself. I think my filler word is and as well. And I also use the word of the day. Joseph, great job. However, you like the word So just pause, collect your thought, and then speak. Jonathan, and ah, and so. Those are your favorite. So overall, we did a great job, as I stated earlier. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you for that very thorough report. All right. For the general meeting, just everything. We did begin the meeting slightly late with some microphone issues, but we resolved that very quickly and promptly. So that is very nice. Let's hope we can keep the streak going. We were mostly on time for the whole meeting. We flip-flopped a bit between being late and early for some of the meeting, but we managed to make it up to the table topics. So good job on that. And thank you to Horace Taylor for his impromptu masterpiece, I guess. Thank you. Back to you, Xavier.
Well, okay, I'll just say it. Okay, so I just want to thank everybody for coming. I do see we have one new person. So Joseph, do you want to say just we already know your name, but have a first name, last name, and your school, and one fun fact about you, I guess.
Sure. So I'm Joseph. My last name is Chen, C-H-E-N. I live in Bentonville, Arkansas, and I'm a 10th grader. I go to a private school. One thing I like to do is play tennis. I also enjoy playing my French horn, and I love to cook. So
We have a lot of similarities. So I love cooking as well, and I recently liked to play tennis. So, well, thank you all for coming again.
One more thing
One more thing.
about the public relation events the club did last night. Peter mentioned it briefly at the beginning of this meeting, but I think Horace, you have a couple of pictures, right? Would you mind?
I think, okay, so as he does that, we can move on to assigning roles. For next week, who would like to be the Toastmaster? Okay, Mr. Xavier Taylor will take the Toastmaster role. Who would like to be General Evaluator? Matthew C will be the General Evaluator for next week. Michael has already taken, I believe, is it 2 speakers next week or 1 speaker next week? Is it 2?
Do we have a training lesson?
Yes. Is it a training lesson or is it a 2 speaker event next week?
Anybody know?
We haven't settled on the training session yet, because training session would be 20 minutes or, 20 minutes. And we haven't settled on who's gonna do that.
Okay, so
So
we're
how
just
about we
do
do
two
two
speakers.
regulars?
Okay.
speech?
So one speaker will be Michael, and another speaker will be anyone who volunteers.
I'll be a speaker for you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster Don Gray, to volunteering for that speaker role. Now
Fine.
for the evaluators, who would like to evaluate speaker one, Michael Leo?
I can. Can I?
Oh, yes, thank you. So, sorry if I mispronounced your name, but Hyen Fan.
That's right. Mhm.
Thank you. We'll evaluate Michael Leo. Who would like to evaluate Don Gray? Toastmaster Don Gray.
It would be a pocket speech, does not necessarily have to be evaluated now.
Okay, so no evaluator needed for Don Gray. Toastmaster, topics, oh no, let's do topics master. We'd like to be the topics master. Mr. Horace Taylor is enthusiastically get volunteered for table topics master. And for the grammarian, I'll take the grammarian. And for the timer, who would like to be the timer? Preferably someone online, because then they can actually do it. Yeah, definitely, yeah. So does anybody online is able to take the role of timer? Thank you, Mr. Horace Taylor, Toastmaster Horace Taylor, for taking that role. And have we gotten the general?
That's
Okay.
not it.
I know what we have. What have we done? Yeah, we got it.
We got it all there. Yeah.
I believe we have gotten every role. We have gotten every role. So at that, everybody may be dismissed, and thank you.
Well,
Can I get everyone to smile so I can take a quick photo shoot? On 3. 1, I want to see Tifa's. There you go, Tifa's. 1, 2, 3, go.
Oh, that's wait.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah. Why do you think it was black?
Michael, yours wasn't.
What?
Anyway, the point is that we're gonna have more events like this, and we will involve everybody next time we go to a promotion, a club promotion and public relations events.
Okay, thank you for that.